filling in the background here. So, just a moment. Yeah, just filling in the background here. And this is a combination of black and burnt umber. Yeah, so we're just going to go with the kind of standard background that we've been doing the whole time, which is for this series, and that is black and burnt umber. And just applying it with a number 4 flat, which is, nothing special. I like applying background with flat because you can, obviously use the broad of the brush, but also get into details with these little lines. So there's a little more versatility here. And I do prefer the flat over the angled brush, just because you can use both sides of the flat interchangeably, whereas the angled really just is on one side, doesn't flip over as easily. So, and oops, I'll just back it up a little bit here so you can get a. So this is a finch. It's a rainbow finch, and all of the flowers and fruit and the bird, everything in this painting is native to Australia, and that's because this painting is going to Australia. It's going to be exhibited in a gallery called 19 Karen, which is in Mermaid Beach on the Gold Coast. I guess the closest big city would be Brisbane. I haven't been there personally, but it's going to be exhibited there and for sale there as well. Do I use gesso? Yeah, you're looking at it. This is black gesso. Yeah, I like using gesso. More black gesso more than white gesso, because I find that when I use white gesso, it kind of messes around with my value perceptions. So yeah, I prefer to use black gesso. Let me just move this down so you don't quite get the glare. Yeah, black gesso, and you can see that the black gesso isn't really black. It's like a dark gray, so it's much easier to judge value. Painting, I haven't worked on it for a few days now, so it should be pretty dry. Yeah, hello everyone, welcome to this Wednesday night live stream. If you have any questions related to art or art history or being an artist, being colorblind, anything along those lines, yeah, feel free to just drop them in the comments. I'm happy to share based on, at least my experience. I'm no expert, but I am a professional artist. I am represented by 3 different galleries, and I've shown in a lot of cities around the world. I've shown in London and Los Angeles and New York, Miami, Seattle, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. And so yeah, I'm happy to share my experiences if you have any questions. Hello from Melbourne. Oh, hello. Yeah, you're from Australia. You'll recognize a lot of these elements here. This painting is going to 19 Karen, which is in the Gold Coast. That's one of the galleries that represents me. And I'm going to be sending them two paintings. Just turn this on its side for a moment. It's much easier to paint the outer edge. Do I lead first before I paint, or just paint? Maybe your question is, do I draw? Do I draw it out first? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I draw the whole thing out. I designed the composition in Photoshop, and then after I have exactly the image I want in Photoshop, then I transfer that image from Photoshop to the canvas. And I do the transferring by grid. I use a 1-inch grid if the painting is small enough, and if the painting's not small, then and if I can't use a grid because it's too large, then I'll go to something like a projector or something like that. But yeah, I transfer the painting exactly this as it appears in my Photoshop document, and then kind of, I guess, color it in, for lack of a better explanation. And you can see this is oil paint, and I use black gesso. And I draw the whole image with a light pencil, like a gray or a white. Oh, thank you so much. Any tips for merging from cartoon to realism? You struggle with dimensions, especially hands. Yeah, well, if you start with cartoon, it's actually harder to go the other way. It's harder to go from realism to cartoon, just because a lot of people don't know what to exaggerate. But with cartoons, yeah, typically hands and eyes are much too big. So if you're going from cartoon to realism, what you're going to find is that it's mostly proportions that are wrong. But you have a good problem there, because the starting with cartoons will give you it's quite a good advantage when you start with your choosing expressions. So yeah, I guess my advice would be really pay attention to the size of your eyes. Chances are your eyes are too big in your realism. But when you're drawing realistically, it's the same whether you're drawing a face or a flower. It's the same idea, and that's everything in relation to everything else. So don't just look at the shape, look at the negative spaces. That'll really help you out as well. So try not to think about the thing you're drawing as a nose, for example. If you can't sort of suspend your disbelief, if you can't not see the nose, if you can't see the shapes that it makes instead of the nose, you can turn your drawing upside down and try drawing it like that. That's a nice way to disrupt your brain from seeing the image as just as a face. Because I guess what I'm trying to say is we get in our own way when we draw. Our brain, we have a huge portion of our brain that is dedicated to facial recognition. And because of that, we have ideas, even if they're subconscious, we have ideas about what we want to see when we look at an eye or a nose or a mouth. And so we sort of match up it's called schema, the technical term. We apply schema to objects. We see faces, we see noses and eyes and so on. So when you're drawing realism, what happens is your brain is applying that schema, that sort of pre-knowledge that an eye is supposed to be there or a nose is supposed to be there, sort of thing. And that can really mess with your perception that you're drawing. And you end up drawing this kind of generic eye or generic nose instead of drawing the eye that's right in front of you or drawing the nose that's right in front of you. You just draw this generic version of it. That's all schema. A big part of drawing is learning to override or bypass that schema. And there are different techniques you can use. Like I said, you can draw with your reference material upside down, so it doesn't quite look like the thing that your brain thinks it is. You can also check your work in a mirror. After you draw a little bit, hold a mirror to it and look at your work through the mirror. And seeing it in reverse sometimes is enough to make you pull back and say, whoa, wait a second. That's in the wrong spot. Yeah, you're welcome. I learned about schema the hard way when I was in my first year drawing class in university. We went outside and we were drawing from life, and I was in first year university. I was a hotshot from high school, because I had been drawing comics at that point for, 5 or 6 years. So I was fairly decent for my age at drawing anatomy and so on. So we went outside the first year drawing class, and the professor said, pick any subject. It's going to be 20 minutes or whatever the time limit was, and do a drawing. And a lot of the people were picking trees or just other little things, garbage cans, things around that would be quite manageable within a 20-minute time limit. But because I was a hotshot, 18-year-old hotshot, who thought he could draw anything, I decided to draw this truck that was parked very close to where we were drawing, and it was a and I made it. I used my full 20-minute time limit, and I just put all the details in there. I just, in my mind, I just nailed this truck, right? Logos and reflections in the mirror, and I thought it was a pretty good drawing. And during the critique, the professor, he typically, instead of critiquing everybody's work, he would typically choose 3 examples that maybe fulfilled the objective well, and then another 3 examples that demonstrated a teaching moment. We'll put it that way. So he called on my work and he said, hey, let's all have a look at this one. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, great. I'm one of the top 3. This is amazing. He's going to show everyone how incredible my truck is. And he totally surprised me. So what he said was, take a look at the wheel, at the tire. in this example, in this drawing. And I'm looking at the tire that I just drew. I'm thinking, yeah, I nailed it. I got the brand across there. I nailed the hubcap. This thing's amazing. Even the treads. I just did such a great job. And then he says, now take a look at the wheel of the truck. And I looked at the truck, at the wheel, and it was flat. And the wheel that I drew was perfectly round. And then he called me out as this is a great example of schema. The student, and he was talking about me, thought his brain told him what a wheel looked like. And so he drew this ideal version of a wheel, and he thought he was looking at the real subject, but he wasn't. And I was just so devastated that it was a negative review. I worked really hard on it, but I was just so busted at the same time. The wheel that I drew was round, and the wheel that I was looking at was flat. I didn't see it as flat the whole time. I couldn't believe it. So obviously I've carried that lesson with me throughout my career. That's a really good example of schema. And I was on the wrong side of it at that point. But valuable anyway to at least get that lesson in first year. No, I didn't even notice it was flat when I initially drew it. I just applied my knowledge of wheels to the drawing, and I was just so busy trying to race through and add all these details to impress everyone. I was just, obviously, I was in first year drawing. It was a rookie mistake done by a rookie. You can't. It's fine. But what was important is that I learned from that lesson. Yeah. Have I heard of the anime blue period? No, I haven't heard of the anime blue period. I've heard of Picasso's blue period. But no, I don't. I don't follow anime closely enough to know different periods. This bird's obviously it still has the leg here, and it's going to be sitting on a branch. I'm going to put that in afterwards. Oh, thanks so much, Tazzy. Appreciate that. Yes, I'm just filling in the background here. If you guys have any questions about the art world or being a painter or being colorblind, anything like that, please feel free to drop those questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions. A little bit about myself while I'm waiting for questions to come in. I'm a professional painter. I've been a professional now for about 6 years. By professional, I mean I exhibit in galleries, and I'm represented by 3 different galleries, 2 in Canada and 1 in Australia. And right now I have 3 shows. I have a show in Australia at 19 Karen Contemporary Art Space. That's in the Gold Coast. I have a show in Montreal. It's a solo show with 25 paintings at Gallery Une. And I also have work being exhibited right now in a New York gallery called Treat Gallery. Those are not, the Treat Gallery show though is not oil paintings. Those ones are photographs. So I show not just strictly photographs. I digitally manipulate them. I'll take a photo of something and then basically paint on top of it with in Photoshop. And so I have a whole series through Treat Gallery in New York right now. Yeah, and then so projects that I have coming up, I have the Bank of Montreal auction for the kids' help phone in the spring. I'll be donating another painting to that. I have a BuzzFeed article coming out fairly soon about me. That should be good. And yeah, I just launched a whole bunch of NFTs of my current solo show. So if you guys are into or collectors of NFTs, you can certainly check out my NFTs. I have NFTs on Maker's Place and Foundation and OpenSea. If you're interested in my art, but maybe an original is out of your budget, but you'd like some anyway, I do sell prints through my website. It's markliamsmith.com, and they start at $25 for the smaller ones. So maybe there's something there you'll like. There's about 40 different ones in there. Okay, so we got some questions here. When did I start painting or drawing at all? So I started drawing when I was, I don't know, very, very young. I think I started drawing around 10 or 11 when I started collecting comics, but talking to my parents, they would say much younger than that for being interested in art. I didn't start painting until university, and obviously I painted in art class in high school and so on, but I mean I didn't start painting, like I didn't own any of my own paint or anything like that until university. And then I did a painting degree. I did a fine arts degree, but then I didn't do anything with it, and I ended up doing other kinds of work for a while, and then came back to painting 6 years ago. So I've been, or I guess I came back 7 years ago. I've been a professional for 6 years. What type of paint do I use? I use oil paint. The brands I use are Michael Harding and Old Holland, primarily because they have no fillers. A lot of oil paint companies, other than Michael Harding and Old Holland, all of the paint companies, including Winsor Newton and Gamblin, and basically anyone you've heard of, use fillers like calcium carbonate and chalk and wax. Not all of them use all of those fillers, but fillers are used even in professional quality oil paint. So I tend toward Michael Harding and Old Holland. The only exception is I will use Gamblin paint, just because that's where I started when I was building up my oil paint collection, and I started with Gamblin, and I do enjoy Gamblin. So yeah, those are. I have a whole YouTube video on what paints are the best for their different price points. If you're interested in how to paint, yeah, you could check out my YouTube on that. I have a whole series on designed for beginners. Everything from the difference between painting on panel and canvas and linen, all the way to picking out paint for every budget, and just giving recommendations. I just today released a color basics, talking about hue. There are 3 different dimensions of color. There's hue and chroma and value. So you could check those out on YouTube if you're interested. If you do a kind of art that requires color, that might be of some value to you. How do we shade and show the shadows to make it look 3D? Yeah, so shading, I have a TikTok on the 9 different ways of shading you could check out. But basically, for shadow, there are 2 kinds of shadow. There's cast shadow, and then there is core shadow. So a core shadow is a shadow, that's here, I'll just use my hand as an example. So you see the light here. The shadow that's on my hand is the core shadow. The shadow that my hand casts, like there, that's called a cast shadow. So those are 2 different kinds of shadows. The core shadow is always the same hue as the part that's lit. So this and this are the same hue with some small differences. This one is slightly lower in chroma or vibrancy. Also, it's lower in value, so that means it's darker. And then typically, it'll also be very slightly shifted toward the cool colors, so blue tinted. Whereas cast shadows have nothing to do with the color of the object itself, and they have everything to do with the color of the object that the shadow is being cast upon. So yeah, those are kind of the 2 different ways that shadows work. What's my favorite style? My favorite style is this style. It's called realism. And that's not to be confused with hyperrealism or photorealism. This is not hyper or photorealism. With realism, the painting looks real from a distance, but when you get close, I'll show you, it just looks like a bunch of squiggles again. So that doesn't look real at all, you know. It just looks like a painting, but when you pull, so that was about 2 inches away, by the way. So, but when you pull back, it starts to look real. So that's my favorite kind of painting. I like all kinds of painting though. I appreciate painting from all eras, and not just for the style that they're painted in, but also for their significance in art history and for the moments. And so I think some of the best painting ever produced has come out of the I'd say modern day Holland, and in the sort of 17th and early 18th century. But there are amazing examples all the way through art history. Wish you could go see my work in real life. Oh, thanks so much. If you are interested in seeing the catalog, their gallery is always happy to send a PDF, so you could email Gallery Yoon. And there are links in my bio, or you can check them out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. When you choose to fill in the background over your preliminary sketch, as now, when do I choose? I don't do it at the very beginning because I don't want to lose my drawing, but I try not to wait as late as I did this time, just because when the edge is the problem, right? So I'm painting part of the background that's not touching any foreground like this is not an issue. The issue is the part of the background that touches the edge of the foreground. I don't want a crisp, clean edge everywhere. I want the edge to be blurred some places. So what happens is I paint the thing, and then I paint the background, then I have to go back into the thing to touch it up. So, I try not to wait too long, but sometimes I get a little excited with the subject that I'm painting, and then I end up forgetting to paint the background. Like I've done this time. Well, not that I forgot, but I was just delaying it. What do I do not to lose the initial placement when you paint black over it? So the black I paint first. That's black gesso, that's not black paint. So I paint this black here with black gesso, and then I draw on top of the black gesso, I draw my image. So I never do lose that initial placement. That's one of the advantages of using black gesso. Thanks so much. What's the little squares in the background? Oh, the squares are, that's how I transfer the drawing. That's a grid. Those won't be there in the final piece. They're going to be painted over. But so what I do is I make my image is a bunch of reference images all put together. And I make that overall image on Photoshop. And then to transfer it from Photoshop to the panel or canvas, I draw a 1-inch grid. That's what those little squares are that you see there. And then I use a colored pencil like gray or white to draw my composition. Okay, so I'm just scrolling back through the chat here. I'm a few questions behind. When you're painting over the perch and said you would paint on top of it. Oh, this one. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to figure that out. I'll paint around that, but yeah, I'll just wing it. I'll just kind of roughly eyeball that one. What's my opinion on Banksy's art? Yeah, Banksy has a successful career. I think it's really difficult to stay anonymous in this day and age, so I find it highly implausible that a significant number of people don't know who he is. The stunt that recently occurred in Sotheby's, where his image was, it was revealed that there was a shredder hidden in the frame that only partially destroyed the painting, but ironically made it way more valuable. Yeah, I find that hard to believe that there weren't people on the inside in cahoots on that. But generally speaking, I think that yeah, he's done a lot of good for street art, which is a, you know, I think you can divide street art into a couple of different categories. There's a legit street art movement out there with really skilled artists, and then there are, you know, and they're doing murals and of various sizes, and I know some people who do that actually for a living. But but I'm not talking about vandal art. These are professionals. So yeah, that whole category is fairly underrated and under recognized, I think, in the artistic community. I think there needs to be a lot more attention paid at an academic and at a critical level for all of the amazing work that is being put out there in public streets. I'm not just talking about spray paint. I'm not just spray paint, but also, you know, like ceramic art. These textile art and chalk art. There's a lot of amazing art out there that goes unrecognized and even unclaimed by the artists. So yeah, kind of a roundabout way of talking not just about Banksy, but also about all of the different kinds of art that exist out there. Let's see. Have I ever done a custom art piece for someone? Yes, I have. I've done custom painting commissions. I've done custom tattoos. I've done drawing commissions. Yes. I typically charge a little bit extra for commissions because they, you know, a commission is made just for one person. And so the typical commission has usually things about it that I may not put in. certain color choices. Maybe the person requests a certain color flower or a certain kind of flower. Let's say if there are flowers in there. And if there's a kind of commission that would be atypical, then I would usually charge a little bit more for it, because it would be harder for me to sell on the through one of my galleries if there was something that was a little bit unusual. Gamblin, have I entered Gamblin's Torrid Gray contest? No, I wish. I would love one of Gamblin's Torrid Gray. So I have I don't have Torrid Gray, but I think I have every other tube of Gamblin. And let me just show you this. This is these are Gamblin's limited edition. This came out in 2019. Rust red, iron violet, and brown ochre. All of these are made with reclaimed iron. So Support Clean Water, what they did is they went into, I don't know, let's just say what river it is here. Anyway, there's it's basically beside an iron mine here, yeah. At this iron mine, a bunch of the iron's gone in and contaminated the water source. So they've gone and reclaimed a lot of that iron and made it into pigments. So you have this this brown ochre. This is the shade, so that's added black. That's the natural ochre. And then the tint is what it looks like when you add white. I'm not terribly excited about brown ochre. Rust red is getting a little more exciting. It's transparent, and I tend to favor opaque colors because I can always make them transparent by adding more solvent or linseed oil. But this one, this iron violet, this looks really exciting because I don't really have any mauves in my collection. There's there's an Old Holland mauve that I have my eye on, but this mauve looks amazing. So yeah, anyway, and then it comes with a collector's panel. I haven't cracked it yet. One of these days I'm going to do this on a live and test out these colors for you guys. But yeah, this iron violet looks really cool. But yeah, that's Gamblin. So that's really cool that they are trying to do something for the environment. Do I have a hobby except for art? From art? No, I don't really have time for hobbies. I have a 3-year-old, and then I have a lot of different aspects of my art. So I paint, but then I also make NFTs, and I make TikToks, and I make YouTube videos. And I make photography. So most of my day is either making art or making something around my art. But no, that doesn't leave much for hobbies. I do like to try to read when I have some downtime, but I haven't really had any downtime. So I'm just scrolling back through the chat, see if I've missed any questions here. Space online. Do I have any other replacements for gesso? It's kind of expensive where you're from. No, I don't think there are any replacements for gesso. You certainly wouldn't want to gamble if you're using oil paint. You wouldn't want to do something like house paint or house primer or anything like that. You can, if you're an acrylic painter, you don't need gesso. You could just use white acrylic, but white acrylic paint is more expensive than gesso. So, yeah, there's no real replacement or substitute for gesso. And if you're an oil painter, I would not recommend painting if your canvas or paper or linen or panel is not primed. It really needs to be primed. Otherwise, the oil will get soaked up unevenly into your support, whatever that support is, panel or canvas, whatever. Would you ever do what Banksy did with a girl with a balloon? Are you talking about destroying my piece at a Sotheby's auction? Well, if I ever got into Sotheby's, then I'd be able to consider destroying it. But no, I really wouldn't want to destroy a piece. But the fact that he did that is exactly in line with his brand, I guess you could say. I'm just going to grab my selfie stick here. This selfie stick I use, just bend it down, and then I put it on top of the easel and stretch it out. Now I have what's called a maul stick, and I can rest my hand on this stick so I don't have to put my hand into the painting. It gives me a little more support and stability for getting details. They don't give a free sample. No, they don't. Birds and flowers are your favorite things? Yeah, I really like painting birds and flowers. I just finished a show with 25 paintings. And if you're interested in seeing that show, I have prints available in my online shop. So you can see all of the different variations of birds and flowers and pots and lobsters, all kinds of things. Yeah, using a selfie stick as a maul stick, because it hooks on the on my easel like that. So yeah, it's really perfect. Oh yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to share my whatever tips I've learned. Usually those tips are based on mistakes that I've made. The you need gesso is a tip that came from a mistake. I did a painting in art school. I decided that I was going to do without gesso, and yeah, it just soaked right through in really weird ways. What do I mean by tempered for oil pieces? I'm not sure. Did I say tempered? Today's the first time you did oil on top of acrylic. You love the way it turned out. Yeah, you can do that. You can put oil on top of acrylic. You just can't do it the other way. I mean, it's not recommended that you put oil on top of acrylic, but just that, you know, there's not a lot of long-term studies on how that affects the painting, because acrylic's only been around for 70 years or something like that. But yeah, as long as you're not putting acrylic on top of oil, that's the big no-no. And the reason is that obviously the acrylic dries much more quickly than the oil does. And if the top layers dry first and then the under layers dry after that, the oil layers, then what happens is once those oil layers dry, they will cause the upper layers, the acrylic, to crack. And so you're going to get a bunch of cracks in your painting. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe you want to get a bunch of cracks in your painting. Maybe you want to get kind of a weathered look. Maybe that will, there's a concept you're working on, like maybe it's an old cracked portrait or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, black gesso is good. This is black gesso. You can see it's just dark gray. You can also get clear gesso. Like if you have a nice piece of linen, maybe a Belgian linen or something, you want to kind of show off. You want to leave some of your paint, some of your support untouched, so you can show that your support is linen, not canvas. Because linen's about $45 per yard, whereas canvas is about $6. So I mean, you need a lot of money to paint with linen. I've only ever done it once, done one painting in linen, and I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I didn't notice a significant difference because I gessoed it so many times that my surface was pretty smooth anyway. So now I tend to use panel for my smaller work, and then for my larger work I'll use canvas. Making sure my paper or canvas was, maybe I said primed in a certain way. To prime it means to, so gesso is called a primer. Basically so you have your paper or canvas or linen or panel, whatever it is, and then you put the gesso on top of that, and it acts as a barrier, a layer, so that when you paint on top of there, it doesn't go through the gesso. It doesn't affect what's underneath, the wood or the canvas or the paper. That you need that barrier, because if you take away the gesso, the primer, and the paint goes right onto the wood, it goes in, but it goes in unevenly and it affects everything. So you need the gesso to almost acts like a dam. How much you enjoy my drawing videos. Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you saying that. So this painting's coming to a close. After I finish this background, I'm going to just touch up some of these little edges and maybe put some more details in this. Can I say happy birthday to Mika? Sure. Oh, it's Nika. Do I plan my paintings? Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty meticulous about the planning of the paintings. I have an archive of different flowers and fruit and birds and bowls and all kinds of bugs and butterflies, of all kinds of things. And I draw from that archive and I create my compositions on Photoshop. And then I transfer those compositions to a panel using a white pencil, like drawing with a white pencil on top of black gesso. And so, yeah, it's all very thought out and very meticulous. Yeah, it's an exact composition. It's at least for the paintings that I sell in galleries, anyway. Where do I buy my paints from? I buy my paints from the local art store. So I'm just outside Toronto, so I'm lucky enough that we have a bunch of good art stores in Toronto, like Gortzman's and Curry's and Dessert. So on very rare occasion, there's a product that I can't get in Canada. I will order it from either Jerry's Artorama in the States or Dick Blick's in the States. And those are fairly large art stores that have some of the lesser known colors or products. I mean, my favorite paint is Michael Harding, and you can only get that in 2 different stores in Canada. And they both happen to be in Toronto, so there's Gortzman's on Spadina and College, and then Articulations in the Junction. Those are the 2 areas where you can pick up Michael Harding oil paint. What do I use to seal my paintings? Yeah, I use just a regular varnish. I usually just use a semi-gloss varnish. I have to make sure the painting's completely dry first before I do that. I have a number of TikToks on how to varnish. If you're interested, how, not just how, but also why you would varnish. So it's pretty important to varnish your pieces. I'll do this other side of his head here. Yeah, so what do you use with oils? Oh, sorry to hear about your cat, Nika. It's very sad when we lose pets. Lotus is asking, what do you use with your oils to add to them? So you add water for acrylic. Yeah, so if you have acrylic, you can add gel medium to either increase the transparency of your acrylic, or you can play with the texture. Like if you used a nepheline gel, which is coarse, you can have other things inside your acrylic gel, like sand or even glass. There's a Canadian company out of Kingston called TriArt that makes some really good acrylic-based products to add to your acrylic paint. And then you can use water, of course, as something that both cleans your brushes for acrylic, but also dilutes your paint. Now, in oil paint, you have the equivalents as well. So the equivalent of gel medium for oil paint is linseed oil, or whatever oil your paint happens to have. Not all oil paint is linseed oil. Some of it, French oil paint manufacturer Chavin uses poppy seed oil, but you can also get all kinds. You can get safflower oil, you can get walnut oil, you can get coconut oil even in oil paint. But typically it's linseed oil. I actually have a YouTube video on all the different kinds of oil and what they do and why you would want to use them in different cases. But yeah, so you have the equivalent to gel medium is oil for oil paint, and then the equivalent to water, you've written turpentine. That's true. However, a lot of artists don't use turpentine anymore. Now there are safer and less toxic alternatives to turpentine, such as terpenoid or odorless mineral spirits. And in both cases there, you can use those products to both dilute your paint to increase the transparency, but also to clean your brushes afterwards, just like you would with water and acrylic. So yeah, you can thin your oils with terpenoid or odorless mineral spirits. I don't. On occasion I will thin my oils just with linseed oil. But in the academic manner of glazing, see, I'm not glazing right now. I'm doing a technique called alla prima, which is a wet into wet technique. But in the academic manner of oil painting, something like the 7-layer method, the Flemish 7-layer method, you would certainly use terpenoid or odorless mineral spirits to thin or dilute your oil to a point where it's become, each layer is nearly transparent, and you're glazing those layers on top of basically a value study, which is something called a grisaille or a dead layer. So that's one of the great things about oil paint, is there's so many different ways to do it, so many different ways to apply the paint. And you can really change up the consistency of your oil paint with just by adding more or less of those things, like binders. So binders are the oil, and fillers are the other things you can add to your oil paint. Some oil paints come with fillers, like chalk or calcium carbonate. Another paint doesn't come with any fillers, but you can certainly add those kinds of things on your own if you want to. You can change the consistency. The grandson of famous psychologist Sigmund Freud was a very famous painter. His name is Lucian Freud. He died in his late 80s, not too long ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And he famously put sand in his oil paint just to create a really rich texture. So yeah, you can put all kinds of things. Am I using a lot of paint right now? No, I'm not. Oil paint goes a long way. I'm not using very much paint at all. That's you use way less oil paint than you do acrylic. Like, it's not even funny. If I pull basically any color out of my tube here, let me see. So, okay, I just grabbed a tube at random. You see the year here is 15, or maybe that's a 16. So that's what, 6 years old. And I'm, probably 2/3 of the way through. Here's another one. 2016 again. Less than half. So, this is a Series 3 Michael Harding. So Michael Harding's the highest quality oil paint you can get. There's no fillers. It's just pigment and linseed oil. Series 3, there's 7 series, but Series 3, how you calculate the price is you go the series number times 10 plus 10. So a Series 3 is 3 times 10 is 30 plus 10 is $40. But $40 over 6 years, right, is pennies per day. So it lasts a long time. That's 6 years worth. No, you don't use very much oil paint at all. I may have to use a smaller brush for these little details here. This number 4 is just getting a little too big. I guess not. Able to use the lines and the edge well enough, I suppose. Okay, I'm gonna go for the bottom now. It's because what I had there wasn't quite dark enough last time, so I'll probably just manage it like this. Yeah, good. Yeah, you should definitely go back. Get back into it. Give it another shot. It's always there. It's waiting. You can always just sort of try to relearn the medium. Why do I change the orientation? Yeah, so it's easier. I'm painting edges right now, right? I'm painting the edge for where the background meets the foreground. And because I'm right-handed, my brush is pointing down like this. And so I need to paint that edge right there. I can't paint that edge because my brush is pointing that way. I have to paint along that edge. I have to paint along the left edge of something. I can't paint the right edge of something because my brush is pointing the wrong way. So if I need to paint the right edge of something, I basically have to turn my painting upside down so I can paint along that side. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's all to do with if I paint that side, I get a clean edge, and if I paint that side, I get a blurred edge. So that's why I keep rotating the canvas, and that's a luxury because I'm using a small canvas here. When you have these really big canvases, it can be quite difficult to get your edges sorted out well enough. Yeah, so for those of you who are new here to the live, please do let me take the opportunity to plug my prints. You can go to markliamsmith.com. There's a link in my bio, and I have prints available of over 40 of my oil paintings. So if you like my art enough to pick up a print, yeah, certainly do appreciate that, all your support. And if you're not into buying art, but you would like to support me in other ways, then please do head over to YouTube and subscribe, follow, do all of those kinds of things if you like. My YouTube channel is basically longer form content of my TikToks. So, like today, for example, I just posted on color basics, talking about hue and specifically general hue and specific hue, and talking about how that relates to temperature in color theory. And in not super long form, they're anywhere from say 6 to 10 minutes, but they are pretty packed full of information. So if you are into art, if you're thinking about developing a practice and you'd like a little bit more of a foundation in color theory, then yeah, please check out my YouTube channel. Because I'm colorblind, I've had to really study how color works, and so a lot of my knowledge comes from the theory of what happens when different colors go together, what happens to the chroma, to the value, to the hue. How do you make what's a complementary color? How do you make one? How do you identify it? How do you make a split complement or a triad, anything like that? Yeah, thanks so much, Tazzy. Appreciate it. Okay, so there we are. That's painted. I'm going to pull up a smaller brush at this point. It seems my phone isn't wanting to charge, even though it's plugged in. Let me see if I can fix this on the fly here. Oh, yeah, that worked. Okay, good. I had a minor emergency there, but not. Disaster has been averted. Oh yeah, okay. So your depth is your challenge. Yeah, that's the kind of thing everyone has some kind of challenge I've found in this space. Um, and that's really rewarding when you can try and then it works out and you see the results of your time and your effort. So there aren't many little areas left. Trying to take care of some of these edges. I think that's about it. Down here. I'm going to have to go back and touch up some of these leaves, obviously. This is just a brush. This is a fine liner from Meaden. So this is a 000. No, it's just a brush. This is a round brush. Brush sizes, yeah, it's just a small brush. For brush sizes, you can go all the way down to 20 zeros. This is a triple, so by no means the smallest. Back when I was a little crazier for detail than I am now, I actually had to make a brush one time. I was painting an ant that was crawling on one of the flowers, and the ant's leg was, I had to use a brush that was just a few hairs, and then I had to paint the shadow of the ant's leg, and that brush only had 2 hairs in it. So I took a 20-0 brush and tried to modify it with an X-Acto knife. It was, and I couldn't even really see it. So when I had my phone on a tripod, and I had my brush underneath, and I had it zoomed right in, for reverse pinch. So my phone was on maximum magnification, and then I had my brush under basically a magnification. It was 2 hairs, and I was trying to perform microsurgery, basically. Yeah, that was intense. So it turned out okay. if you want to see that painting, it's called The Judgment of Van Huysum. It's a black and white painting, and that's available online. The print, anyway, is available in my online shop. Yeah, hello, Kim. No, I don't really take care of my brushes well. When I'm done painting for the night, I just dip them in linseed oil and wipe them on a rag. Yeah, they just tend to last a long time. Maybe because I paint mostly on panels, which are very smooth. There's no tooth from the canvas to eat up the hairs of like the bristles. But no, I don't. I'm not particularly light on my brushes. I certainly don't clean them very well. So yeah, I don't know why they last so long. Just lucky, I guess. Okay, it's gonna be drawing to a close pretty soon here. I have some questions to a video. I have to video the answers for an article that's coming out. So I have a bunch of questions that I have to answer. And things are kind of piling up, so I think I'm going to go do that now. You're a self-taught artist? Nice. Okay, so we just have the branch and the leg to go. And I guess we're going to pick that up next time. And then do some more touch-ups or some leaves here that could really use a touch-up and so on. But okay, that's going to be it for now. Remember to please check out my YouTube channel. It's Mark Liam Smith. Mark Liam Smith, same as my all my social media is the same name. Please check out that YouTube channel. I have uploaded a bunch of new content there. There's some really cool stuff about color theory and hue, but also just getting started with different brushes, different supports, how oil paint works, and I give some recommendations. So check that out if you are into painting at all. I think there might be some useful resources to help you there. And then the other thing, of course, is that if you're into my art, I do have prints available. I have originals available too. through my galleries. But yeah, you can check out the prints on my online shop. Thank you all again so very much. It has always a pleasure having you asking me questions and just kind of hanging out while I do this work. So until the next one.